Welcome to Washington Watch with Congressman Walter Jones. Each month, we take a look at the events happening in Washington, D.C. and how they affect our lives here in eastern North Carolina. And now, here's your Congressman, Walter Jones.
Welcome to the May edition of Washington Watch. Today's guest is Patrick A. Mulloy. He currently serves on the United States-China Economic and Security Review Commission. Commissioner Mulloy is a native of Kingston, Pennsylvania. He received his master's degree from the University of Notre Dame, his law degree from George Washington University School of Law, and his LLM Masters of Law from Harvard Law School. The reason I am so pleased to have Pat Mulloy on our program today is that he and I share many of the same views about what has happened to the American economy and also what has happened to all of our good jobs because of trade agreements. Pat, thank you for being on the show today.
Congressman, it's an honor to be here with you, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with your constituents.
Well, if you would share just briefly some of your background. I know you were on the Senate, worked on the United States Senate Banking Commission and Committee, and some of your background here that I did not mention.
Well, I was very lucky. I came to town. I passed the Foreign Service exam when I was 23 and worked in the State Department for a few years. I went to law school at night and then moved over to Justice, where I was a trial lawyer for a few years, went up and did a master's in international law at Harvard, and then worked in the antitrust division on international antitrust. I got an opportunity to come up and spend a year on the Hill as a fellow, and I served on the House Ways and Means Committee, and then went over to the Senate Banking Committee. And while I was over there with Chairman Bill Proxmire, his general counsel got an appointment to the SEC as a commissioner, and he asked me to stay with him. So that was my opportunity to really be up here and work with the Senate Banking Committee and to really learn a lot about politics, economics, and the international trade situation.
Pat, you made it clear that these are your views that you're sharing with the people of the 3rd District by being interviewed on this show today. Yet you and I have met many times because you're on the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, and I, along with some other members of Congress, have testified a couple of times of my view, and certainly not speaking for my colleague, but my view that this country that I love so much, I've seen it go from a strong manufacturing nation to really hardly a manufacturing nation now. There is some aspects of manufacturing, but not what it was 15, 20, 25 years ago. And also I've been concerned of how the Chinese have taken advantage of us. You're an expert in this area, and would you speak to some of those comments that I just made?
Well, I think it's important to understand that this commission is really a think tank created and paid for by the Congress with a very small budget, but it's a bipartisan commission. We have 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, 6 appointed by people in the House, 6 appointed by people in the Senate. So Mr. Boehner gets 3, Mrs. Pelosi gets 3, Senator Reid gets 3, and Senator McConnell gets 3. Our last 2 reports to the Congress, and we give annual reports based on the hearings. We go to China, we go to Asia, we see what's going on, and we give these reports. They're unanimous, our last 2 reports. So we're like, as I say, Joe Friday in the old Dragnet series.
Right. We
go out and we get the facts, and we try to present the facts with our recommendations to the Congress. If I could just shortly, what we've done, we've thrown our people into a globalized economy where other people and other nations wanted what we had. They had game plans on how to do this, and we had none. And it's very important for this country to understand that we are transferring wealth and power out of the country at a very rapid pace, and we need a game plan of how to keep good-paying jobs in this country and not be outsourcing them and how to balance our trade account. We can't run these massive trade deficits year after year, and then other countries get the wealth and power that we had, and we're going to be left in a pretty bad situation if we don't get control of this.
Pat, many people feel that we have gotten into this economic situation because too many times, particularly in foreign trade agreements, and I didn't support the WTO. I didn't support nation status for China. I was one of those in the Congress that said no, because I don't have the confidence that what we're doing is going to benefit both countries. Mm-hmm. Certainly I'm more concerned about benefiting the American worker than the Chinese worker, but I'm a fair-minded person. If you're going to be fair to me, I will be fair to you. But I've seen too many times these trade agreements that, in my humble opinion, especially with the Chinese, that we put ourselves at a disadvantage instead of equal playing field.
Yes, here's what I think is going on. The Chinese were a great and powerful civilization. They ran into what we call 200 bad years. The British actually went to war with the Chinese to push opium into China. Their civilization fell apart on them, and their great strength and power passed. But they knew that they were a great civilization, and they stumbled on, and finally, beginning around in 1978, a genius named Deng Xiaoping came in, said, we can't rebuild this economy without Western know-how, Western technology, Western investment, and Western markets. And they put a game plan together to incentivize foreign investment into China and to sell the products out of China. 60% of China's exports are from foreign invested companies, many of them joint ventures. The Chinese want the joint ventures because when they get the joint venture, they get the technology and the know-how, and they transfer it to themselves. And they built a very sophisticated manufacturing and technology base, I think at our expense.
Right.
Because we haven't understood or haven't wanted to understand what is happening. There are some interests in our society which are benefiting from this, but I think the vast majority of the American people are not. And that's a very important point. I remember when I was over on the Senate Banking Committee, we did hearings on NAFTA. And I remember there was a gentleman named Pat Choate who came in. He ran for vice president with Ross Perot. Yeah. He came in as a witness. And he said, now they call this the North American Free Trade Agreement. He said, this really isn't a trade agreement. It's an investment agreement so that American companies can invest in Mexico, make their stuff at a cheaper rate, increase their profits, and ship the stuff back to the wealthier American economy. And I think that's pretty much the way it worked out. And that's what a lot of these trade agreements have meant. They're not really trade agreements. They're really investment agreements.
Pat, if you were made king,
yeah,
what would you say would be the right step to reverse or change where America is today?
I think we have to find, well, let me just give you,
sure.
This was an article from the Wall Street Journal on May 25th, 2000. This was the day after Congress voted to give China permanent normal trade relations, meaning that we would give them MFN. What that means is you get the most favorable tariffs that you give to any of your trading partners. Without MFN, the average good coming from China coming into this country would face a 42% tariff. With MFN, they face a 2.5% tariff. When we let China into the WTO, it was an enormous gift because we were saying your goods can come in at an average tariff of 2.5%. But we had certain requirements on them: protect intellectual property rights, don't manipulate your currency. They have taken the good parts, the low tariffs and the investment, and they haven't lived up to the exchange rate. They don't protect intellectual property. So it gets kind of to be a one-sided agreement. And we haven't been aggressive enough in going after the Chinese and saying this cannot be just a one-way trade. This enormous imbalance is sending dollars out of the country, which the Chinese then have sent back in, not to buy our goods, our export, but to buy U.S. treasuries as a way of keeping the dollar overvalued against the Chinese currency. So and this, in a way, helped create the financial bubble in the United States because there was a lot of liquidity being pushed into our system, which then the bankers were pushing out the door to people that didn't, that shouldn't have been getting those kinds of loans. But you can tie this right back to the imbalance in the trading relationship.
Right. Pat, is some of the reason or the problem that we have in trying to say to foreign governments, in this case the Chinese, that we need a level playing field is the fact that we are a debtor nation.
Right.
We owe the Chinese over $800 billion, and we are in a situation where we're seen as a nation that is in economic trouble. The strong nations have got to be a little leery, if that's the correct way of saying it, as to where America is right now. So I don't know how we can see that with the Chinese or some of these other countries that we are actually on a level field to negotiate because we owe them so much.
Congressman, I don't think I completely answered your other question. First, you asked me what we should be doing, and
right.
I think a key part of what we have to do is we have to set a national goal to balance our trade account. We are running massive trade deficits of $500 billion, $600 billion a year. We're going to have about a $280 billion trade deficit with the Chinese alone. Warren Buffett says we're like the rich family living on the hill, no longer earning our way in the world, and we're selling off a piece of the farm each year to pay for a lifestyle. We want to live, but we're not earning. When you run a trade deficit, it means that you're living better than you're earning.
Right.
Okay? So we've got to find a way to set a goal to balance our trade. And then we've got to find ways to incentivize our major American corporations to keep good jobs in this country and not be outsourcing them. Now that we have the number of things we have to do that, but one of them is if we set a goal of balancing our trade and we do it, then they can't just outsource and ship back because somebody's got to buy something from us if they want to do that. So there are ways we can do this, and Warren Buffett has spelled out one in a great article in Fortune magazine in October of 2003.
Okay. Well, I assume that it has to start, and this is not a political statement on my part or a criticism, but there has to be the willpower at the top of the leadership, whether it be a Republican or Democrat. And I haven't seen that in the previous administration, nor am I seeing it right now. Of course, I realize the new president's been in office for 2 years.
Right. But
it seems like when it comes to our trade deficit, the willpower is not there to tackle this issue. Am I right or wrong on that? Or is it just so difficult, it's just not easy to do?
Well, I think part of the problem is we've adopted this free trade ideology, and we've made it into something that is akin to like a religion, and that if you stray from this, you're a heretic, and then they label you protectionist if you challenge. But if you really look at the theory itself as put together by the guy named Ricardo about 180 years ago, this idea of comparative advantage, it wasn't based on mobile capital. When your capital is mobile and your technology is mobile and you can transfer it to the other guy, that's not comparative advantage. That means you're outsourcing your power and wealth to him and he's shipping back and you're running massive trade deficits. So when you really look at the theories, we're not operating the way the theories really should be understood. And there's a gentleman named Ralph Gomery of the former head of the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. He wrote a book with he's a PhD in math. He wrote a book with his colleague at Princeton, Bill Baumol, and they said global trade and competing national interest, and laid all of this out in that wonderful book. And we need to, but what happens, there are people who benefit from this, and they spend a lot of money on voices that will keep saying free trade, free trade, free trade, when it's really not in the interest of the American people, because it really isn't free trade. Other people have strategies to use all of this to transfer power and wealth to them.
Well, I don't think I'm a protectionist, but I do believe that if we don't make the tough policy decisions to get America back on its feet and deal with the trade deficit and realize that we cannot continue to outsource decent jobs to other countries, then I don't know how we get back in a better position than we are now.
Now, the issue of whether China has leverage on us because they own a lot of our debt. The China Commission, as you know, does hearings because you've come over and testified. We do our work by getting in hearings. We travel. We get a lot of intelligence briefings, but we try to bring the best people. We did a hearing in February. Who has leverage on whom with regard to this debt? It's surprising. They don't have as much leverage on us as some people would want to make out. And the reason is because they own so much of our debt that if they begin to sell it off, the value of what they're holding is going to shrink in value on them pretty quickly. Secondly, as one of our witnesses from the Heritage Foundation came in and said, the way the Chinese are managing their currency, they have to have those dollars off the market. So they either have to build a very big mattress in China and stuff them in that, or else they'll have to continue to buy our treasuries. So I think the threat is less than we might imagine. We have some leverage on them because we're their largest consumer, and they don't want us to collapse because that would do real damage to their economy. There can be a win-win in this situation if we adopt real strategies to say this unbalanced trade relationship is not, we're going to bring this to an end. We're going to protect our interests. And you have to move toward domestic-led growth in your economy and not be relying just solely on this export-led growth and enticing our guys to come over there and make things there to ship back here.
Pat, I want to thank you for being on the show today. This has been very informative, and to those of you watching, in just about 10 seconds, Glenn Downs, my Chief of Staff, will be on the show, and we will be able to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Congressman. It's been a pleasure to be with you and your constituents.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much. Glenn, I really enjoyed having Pat Mulloy on. I tell you, I hope the people watching our show enjoyed and got as much information from that 20 minutes of having Pat Mulloy on as we have in many of our shows. It was so informative, really.
Well, that leads me to the opportunity to ask at least a generalized question that a lot of people want to know when they call your office and communicate with you or your staff, and want to know where are the people in Washington, or where are people in leadership who see these problems, and why aren't more people doing more about it? So my first question, I guess, just to follow up on your earlier conversation, would be, what percentage of your colleagues here in Congress share the view that you and Mr. Mulloy do about the situation related to China and trade generally?
Well, you know, Mr. Mulloy was talking about free trade, of how that's really the term itself is not really what people think. My feeling is we've got a strong bipartisan trade group, many of my colleagues in both parties from around the country, who are very, very concerned about some of the issues that Pat Mulloy spoke about, some that our people back in the 3rd District are speaking about. And right now we are in a holding pattern which I don't think is really that bad. We have not had, since President Obama became the president, there's been no effort to bring a trade agreement to the floor of the House. To many of us who are concerned about trade agreements, we think this is a is a good thing that we have not had a trade agreement that we've had to debate on the floor of the House.
So it's sort of like the law. First law of holes is when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. Okay.
Right.
Well, I guess that's a positive step. But along the same lines as we're speaking here today, there has been obviously we've been dealing with the financial crisis in this country for years, and now it's of course spreading worldwide as the people are just finding countries and companies around the world are finding themselves finding difficulty meeting their debt obligations, and people are wanting to know, are we in the U.S. going to be trying to bail out Greece or Spain or the European Union, and what are your thoughts about what's going on and what should be done?
Well, I'm very concerned that recently I think the President made a commitment to help with the financial problems of Greece, and I said to Pat Mulloy, I'm not a protectionist, but I am certainly one that believes that we've got to fix our own house first, and yet we continue to spend money overseas, wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and now we're going to try to bail out Greece, which is a country in economic trouble. But many of us in Congress in both parties think that America has its own economic problems. So it's the chicken and the egg theory. I don't know where this is right now.
Well, along those lines, one of the things that people that have called in have literally asked, is, well, where's this money coming from? We don't have any money. We're borrowing money from China and other places to pay our government debts and to fund massive deficits here. Are we borrowing money borrowing money from overseas to send back overseas? So that, how does this work?
Well, I can honestly say that the majority of us in both parties are very concerned that we continue to expand a federal government from the health care bill to other bills that we passed in the last few weeks. I didn't vote for them, but we continue to add the responsibility and grow the government. And as you said, we don't have our own revenues to pay for the growing debt, so therefore we go to the markets and they buy financial instruments, they buy other of our debt, and I think that at some point in time, if the dollar loses its value, then we've got real serious problems. And at this point, well, we're trying to deal with the problems, but there's no easy answer.
Not to keep banging away on this one subject, but boy, it's a big one. And last month, as we're here in the month of May, obviously, in the month of April, the U.S. ran the largest deficit in 1 month ever. You know, the monthly deficit was over $80 billion, and that was once upon a time a shocking number for a whole year. Do you think that people are just becoming numb to billions of dollars before were shocking, and now no one flinches at trillions of dollars? Is that?
I think that the word numb is acceptable for this reason, that it is such a growing problem in this country that we don't seem to know how to slow this train down. I believe if we could slow the spending down, and I hope that the Debt Commission, I actually spoke to Alan Simpson, who is co-chair with Erskine Bowles of the President's Debt Commission. I spoke to Alan Simpson 3 or 4 weeks ago about another matter, but then as we finished that discussion, I said, let me thank you for serving as one of the co-chairs. Please be honest with the American people. Do not sugarcoat our situation. And my hope is, with Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson, co-chairs, and the Commission, that they will bring out the information to awaken this country to just what dire situation we're in, and let's try to do something about it and save this country for our children and grandchildren.
Now, you have been a supporter of a deficit reduction or debt reduction commission that had more teeth, kind of like the BRAC commission that closed down military bases, and Congress has to ultimately decide what happens, but a package of unpleasant proposals would be put in front of Congress, and they have to vote yes on everything or no on everything. Does this commission have that same kind of teeth?
Glenn, they do not. I regret that the Senate had an opportunity to pass legislation that did have the teeth. As you explained, Congress, you will have to vote on these recommendations. That was defeated in the Senate. We have a House bill introduced by Republican Frank Wolf and Democrat Jim Cooper, and at this point in time that legislation is not moving. Our best hope is getting the truth out of this debt commission that has been appointed by the President that will not can mandate that we in Congress vote up or down.
I think since 2004, if I remember correctly, you are the only member of the House of Representatives to vote, current member, to have voted against every federal debt ceiling increase. And that attempt to, I know we're about out of time, but that attempt to put teeth into that commission was being done through the ceiling, restraining the ceiling on the national debt. When that comes up again, do you think that's got a shot at working?
Glenn, I hope so, because I think the Congress understands, as the American people understand, we don't have the luxury of time anymore. And since we're running out of time, this maybe it's a good way to bring this to an end, I hope that the American people and the people of the 3rd District realize that we need to demand strength in Washington, D.C. We need to demand that Congress does what's right for the people of this country. Let me thank you for watching this show. God, please continue to bless our men and women in uniform. And God, please continue to bless America. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to join us for Washington Watch.